Hello gophers, and welcome to our new video where we'll be learning about the T structure in the testing package. The T structure is the very first structure from the testing package that you'll be using when you start with unit testing in Golang. There are a couple of more structures and they are related to benchmarking and those things, but we'll learn about those in later videos. The T structure contains many methods that are available to you for writing a better unit test cases, out of which few of them are like cleanup, log, fail, error, fatal, run, set environment variable or skip functions. These are some few, but you can see the complete list of functions available to you on the screen, and we'll be discussing about each and every function in detail in this video. So let's start by first function, that is the cleanup function. The cleanup function is a function that is normally used to clean all the common shared resources between the test cases. So let's say you have two test cases and you have some common object or a variable that you wish it to be shared between both the test cases. And now when the first test case gets executed, for the second test case you want that variable or the object to restore to its usual state. So this is the function that you would be calling on and doing all the cleanup activities whenever one test case gets executed successfully. Now let's see how we can use the cleanup function in a unit test case. So along this video I'll be taking this example of a prime number. So I've written a function that checks if the input number is prime or not, and as an output it would send out true or false. So we are writing unit tests for this and we'll be discussing all the functions henceforth using this example. Now I am using the table structure of testing, so the table mechanism where we have one test case where in this test case we'll be testing multiple scenarios altogether. So I have created a list of scenarios that I want to test for the prime number. So these are the input variables and this is the expected output that we would expect. Now for this test case, I have written a cleanup function which right now has nothing much, but it just prints test cleanup. And for each test case for these scenarios, that is this test case, so T. So this is another test case function. So this T is again registering another test cleanup function where it would print the name of the test case and cleanup. Just these two things. We also have few output statements that we would print on consoles just to have a better logging to understand on what scenario or what test case our execution is on. So normally the cleanup function would get executed after the test case has been completed successfully. So now let's try and run this test case and let's see what is printed. So if you see, this test case will get completed once all the scenarios are completed. So this cleanup function should get executed in the last. So you see this get executed in the last, and for each scenario that we were printing the scenario name and the cleanup keyword, we got that printed. But before that we also have this statement printed with the input value. So if you see the print function, so the print ln is printed first for the input value and then the cleanup. So cleanup is actually executed in the end when the test case is completed. So it's almost like running a deferred function on the test case. Next function we'll be discussing is a deadline function. So if you call a deadline function, it gives you two outputs, where the first output is the time, which mentions the expected maximum time duration that test case can take. So in many scenarios you can code that my test case should execute for, let's say, 10 seconds or 15 seconds. So this deadline would mention the exact time when this test case would get stopped, even if it is taking longer than the expected. So this is the final time that when the test case would stop. And then is a second parameter which is which is a flag which mentions if the deadline was mentioned as 0 seconds or not. So if the time out the timeout has been mentioned as 0, then this would give you false. Otherwise it would give you a result true. That means you know that there is an time out that was mentioned when you started executing it. By default, if you don't mention any timeout, it would be 10 minutes approximately. So now let's see this function working in the code. Now for this example, I have printed the start time of the test case, and I have also tried to get the deadline time and the OK parameter from the deadline function. And let's print that for us and let's understand what is the output. So I have this timeout set to 10 seconds. So this is a timeout flag that you can use so that you don't end up in long running test cases in case that's something that is not expected. So if you see, the start time was something around 6 p.m. and the deadline time was 6 p.m. 16 seconds. So it was 6 p.m. and 6 seconds as a starting time, but it was ending time was 6 p.m. 16 seconds because we mentioned as 10 seconds as the timeout, and the OK was set to true. Now let's say I give it as 0 seconds. So if you see in OK, it gives you the time as nothing. So there is no deadline time that is set, and OK is set to false. So by this you know that the timeout flag is set to 0 seconds. That means the test cases can be executed for the duration that it wants to. So there is no forced stopping of the test case. It may take 1 hour, 2 hour, anything, in case it ends up in a wrong loop. So that's how you can check. Let's see what is the default timeout that is there in case you don't apply that flag. So if you are not adding the flag, you can see it is almost 10 minutes that gets added. So you have, by default, you have 10 minutes for your test cases to get executed. If they are taking more than 10 minutes, I recommend you to use this test case flag and mention the time as, let's say, this thing. So that means 11 minutes we have mentioned. 11 minutes is added, you can see in the deadline. So now you have 11 minutes for this test case to get executed. So the third function in the list is name function. We have already seen this function in action in the cleanup function code that we were discussing. So name function is basically just returning the name of the test case that it is executing currently. So that's just the brief about the name function. Now let's move to the log and the logf function. So log and logf functions are basically adding some logs to your test case, and these will be printed on the console if you have used the verbose flag or in case there is an error in your test case. So let's see this in the code. So now the log function is equivalent to the println function, and the logf function is equivalent to printf, but just one case, that is in case you have not added a next line or new line character in the end, it would add that automatically. So you don't have to every time add a new line character at the end of the logf. So this is the only difference between the log and logf functions. And let's see, I have these few test cases, and this number is actually a prime number, but still I have expected this to be a false. That means I am expecting this not to be a prime number, which is wrong. That means this test case should fail, and let's see what result we get. We have executed. So if you see, I got this, that the test case for 2879 got failed, and if you see the log message, that is the first one is start running the test case for this. Then we got the error message that we printed, and then we got the last message. So this logging would help you in debugging your test cases in scenarios when you have a lengthy test case scenarios. If you have multiple steps to execute, so you can keep adding logs, and in case that those gets failed, you will get the output mentioning the logs there. So let's remove the deadline part so that it makes this clear. Now in case you want these logs to be printed for each and every case irrespective of if they are passed or failed, then I would suggest to use a verbose flag. Now verbose flag is basically used to print out every action that is going on. So if you see, this is printing things like, if you see, it started running the test case, okay, and then it's in this table test case, it has started running the test case for the scenario 2. So that is one. Then we have got both the logs for that. Then it got executed for 3, 4, 7, and finally for the test case which has went into an error, and we get the log error messages, and finally the result which says that this complete test case got failed because all these were passed and only this was failed. In case you have not, if you don't use the verbose, it will just mention that this test case got failed and only print log for this test case. So you can compare the logs, log volume. So verbose is normally helping you to know where your execution of your test case is on current basis. So you can analyze that part. The next set of functions in our list is the fail functions. So we have three basic functions for this category. This is fail, fail now, or failed. So failed is just returning you true and false, mentioning that whether the test case has failed or not. But the former two are to mark the test case as failed or not. So the difference between fail and fail now is the fail will let you continue the test case execution after you mark as it has failed also. So let's say you encounter a scenario and you say that mark this as fail, but you have some steps after that as well. So the fail function will allow you to execute the rest of the steps in that test case, but fail now will stop the test case execution and continue with any other test case that is there in the list. Now let's see these functions in action in code. Now I have the same scenario that we were discussing in the last set of function, that is log and logf. So I have just marked the test case as failed. So this is the fail function, that is the first function in that list, and this is something that will by default mark any scenario because we have not added any check before this. So this is going to fail all the scenarios right now. This should ideally. So let's see how the test case got executed. So when you execute the test case, you can see each and every test case getting failed, and if you see, you can see the start log message, and you can also see the end log message there. Okay, that means even if you mark the test case failed over here, this step was still getting executed. So anything after the fail also gets executed, and if you see the last test case, so still this error message, error F, is still printed. So this is how the fail function behaves. Now if I change this from fail to fail now, let's say fail now, and let's execute the complete thing again, and let's see. So if you see all the test cases, I only get the start message of them. I don't get even the end message, or for the last scenario, I don't get the error message as well. So it is like it has stopped the execution of the test case then and there, and anything after this got terminated, did not execute that part. So this is sort of like saving your time of your test cases, because in case the test cases fail, I don't want my code to run the rest of the part of the test case. It would be waste of effort. So that is one thing. And if you have noticed, we have already used the failed flag over here. So let's remove fail now, and let's see. Let's write this. So if you see in all the result, I can see result failed as true because I marked them as true. And in case I remove this, I will only get fail for only the last test case. So the test case as false. Let's go to verbose mode so that I can see this log message for each and every test scenario. So only for the last one I get failed as true, but for other ones, which one were passed, I get failed as false. So this is some extra check in case you want to have this and you want to use this scenario whether to check the test cases failed and according to you want to execute things. So you can use this. So the next set of functions that we'll discuss is error and errorf. So the only difference between the error and errorf is that error is equivalent to println and errorf is equivalent to printf. So you can format your error message using the errorf functions. But error functions internally would be using a similar functionality like calling a log and then calling fail, not fail now. So even if you log a error, your rest of the test case is still getting executed because you have not called fail now. It would internally only call fail. So let's see these two functions in action. So I have used both the functions in case of an error, and I formatted. So if you see error is not for, you're not using a formatters over here like %d or %s. You just have string or variables, you just concatenate them using comma. That's one thing. And using errorf, I am using the formatters and using formatting properties. So now let's execute this test case and see. So if you see, we still are getting this test case fail for certain purposes so that we can see the error messages. So if you see, error has not stopped the execution. We can still see the end message, error end log message that is there. So the rest of the test case is still getting executed. So in case you don't want to use this, then we have another set of functions. If you want to restrict rest of the test case to be executed, yes, we do have a function we'll discuss in the next part of this video. But if you see, you are getting the error for this test case, but as you know that these all test cases are getting passed, so you will not get error for them even if I go to verbose mode. So you don't see the error messages for the other test case scenarios that we have there. So this is basically error and errorf. These are internally using log, logf and fail. Now let's move to next set of functions. Now next set of function is fatal function. So we have two functions again, fatal and fatalf. Again, it is same naming convention that we were using in error and errorf or log and logf. But the only difference with the error functions is it will call the fail now. That means anything that is after the fatal message will not get executed in that test case. Now let's go ahead and see these functions in action in code. So for this, I've just replaced the errorf from the last code that we have just seen, and let's execute this test case without verbose flag. So if you see, I have got a fatal message first, which actually failed. So I don't see the second second fatal message even for this. So that means the fail now has been called, and I don't see the second fatal error also, and I don't see the end log as well. So if I comment this fatal and if I see the fatal f in action, you can still see that. Yeah, you can see it. So over here in fatal or println, you know that every variable, it gets a separation of a space. So if you see, there is a additional space after each and every concatenation that it is doing. So that's a default behavior there. But in formatter, it's your wish if you want to add a space or not. Let's say I added a space just for this part. It's possible, and it will only print one space there. So if you see, we have, so that is why I would recommend to use a F, so Fatal F or Error F or Log F, so that you have the power to format your message according to your needs. Yeah. So I think that's all for this video. We'll be discussing the remaining set of function in next video, because I don't want this video to be too much for one day, but we'll discuss the rest, helper, skip function and parallel run functions, those things in next video we'll be releasing soon. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you like the video, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also press the bell icon so that you don't miss on any new videos or tutorials that we put across for you guys. We also love to hear from you guys in case you have some suggestions on any new tutorial or videos that you want us to do for you guys. So please do not forget to comment down below on this video.